Thousands of unaccompanied migrant children are being released to sponsors here in the United States, but Axios reports the Biden administration is mum on tracking migrant kids, saying, quote, thousands of migrant children have been released by the Biden administration to caretakers in the U.S. as part of the government's program for unaccompanied minors. But there's little to no visibility about what's happened to them. Chad Wolf is the former acting Homeland Security Secretary and Heritage Foundation visiting fellow. Chad, good to see you today. I'll tell you what a difference an administration makes. I remember back in 2018, the Trump administration was hammered by Democrats because there were 1,500 migrant children that were unaccounted for. The now Vice President of the United States, then Senator Kamala Harris, saying this is extremely troubling. These missing kids could be in the hands of human traffickers or worse. One missing child is too many. Now there may be many more thousands of children out there that the Biden administration will not account for, and yet crickets from Democrats.
Well, John, you're absolutely right. I think the hypocrisy that we're seeing is quite loud. Obviously, you said it right, which is during the Trump administration, there was such an outcry for the fact that children were perhaps separated from their family members at certain times during that immigration process. And what we know during that time was, at the height of it, was about 2,600 folks. What we know today is that unaccompanied alien children or minors are in the thousands, over 5,000 that are in HHS custody, in Border Patrol custody and the like. And what we know is the Biden administration has eased the restrictions, or eased the requirements, I should say, of those sponsors picking up those children. So a lot of concerning things going on here, and there certainly should be some accountability for when the federal government places these minors in the hands of sponsors. There needs to be follow-up. We need to understand who they are, where they're going, and what type of conditions and facilities that they will stay in. Because some of these, again, requirements have been eased over the last several months, which is very concerning.
So let's take Kamala Harris's concerns of 2018 and apply them to where we are now in the present. These migrant children were cleared out of the CBP and HHS facilities very quickly because of the horrible optics that were associated. Can we be assured that in clearing them out so quickly, some of these children didn't go into the hands of nefarious people who might mean them harm?
So I don't think so, not at this time. Again, because there was such a push during the Biden administration over the last 3 or 4 months to move children out of these HHS facilities in such a quick manner because of the public affairs issues and the outcry, is they have shortened that vetting process. And that's the concerning point. And so it's not only the conditions that some of these children are staying in while they're in federal custody, it's also where they're going. And during the Trump administration, we put a number of vetting requirements in place to make sure that we knew who they were. The last thing we want to do as a federal government is to turn these children over and put them into difficult situations in sponsors. Certainly. And so we need to make sure we know who they are. We need to make sure they have criminal history record checks, background checks, and the like. And I think the quickness that the current administration is showing to try to get these children out of facilities and into the homes is a little too fast. We need to make sure that we're taking our time and we know who we're placing them with.
Chad, we just got about 45 seconds left. I wanted to ask you about the pictures that we saw all last week in the Del Rio sector of the border, where migrants were just wading across the Rio Grande, many times being led over by somebody who looked like a coyote. Sometimes Customs and Border Protection were there, as in this case. Other times they weren't. Yet Alejandro Mayorkas, your successor, insists the border is closed. Is he just simply in denial?
It's quite a remarkable statement, and the secretary keeps saying that the border is closed, the border is secure. When you have 178,000 illegal apprehensions in the month of month of April alone, the border is anything but closed or secure. And the law enforcement officers of Border Patrol know that. They're losing confidence in leadership, not only at the department, but at the White House, because there are policies not being put in place, policies that work, that stop the traffic, the pictures that you showed, John, that stop that traffic today. But that's not the policy that is currently being pursued. And it's very, very difficult on the border for law enforcement officers and for those communities. And so absolutely, I believe he is in denial, and there is a significant crisis that's going on today.
All right. Chad Wolf, the former acting secretary of DHS, good to be with you today. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
All right.
Sandra?
Thank you.
All right.